The family support that might have provided assistance during their crisis was unavailable due to her parents' own financial limitations and geographic distance, with her mother living on disability payments in Arizona and her father having passed away 3 years earlier after his own expensive medical crisis that had exhausted the family's financial resources. The extended family members who remained in Montana were dealing with their own economic challenges related to the agricultural recession and were unable to provide meaningful financial assistance to Rachel and Tyler. The professional development. Opportunities that might have led to higher-paying positions in healthcare administration or specialized nursing fields required additional education and certification programs that Rachel couldn't afford while managing their current financial crisis and Tyler's ongoing care needs. The career advancement possibilities that could provide long-term solutions to their financial problems were impossible to pursue while struggling to maintain basic survival and meet Tyler's medical requirements. The workplace stress that had intensified during recent months included mandatory overtime shifts that prevented Rachel from spending adequate time with Tyler during his critical recovery period, creating guilt and emotional strain that affected her job performance while generating income that was immediately consumed by medical bills and basic survival expenses. The hospital's chronic staffing shortages had created working conditions where nurses were responsible for more patients than they could safely manage, increasing liability concerns while reducing job satisfaction and professional fulfillment. The credit score damage that had resulted from missed payments and extremely high debt utilization ratios had fallen to 420, making it virtually impossible for Rachel to qualify for conventional loans or secure apartment rentals without substantial security deposits that she couldn't afford while managing Tyler's medical expenses. The financial mistakes that had been forced by medical emergencies were creating long-term consequences that would affect their family's housing and employment opportunities for years into the future. The utility bills that had accumulated during winter months, when Rachel had been unable to maintain consistent payments, included $1,240 in past due amounts for electricity and heating, with disconnection notices threatening to eliminate essential services during Montana's brutal winter weather, when Tyler's neurological condition made maintaining adequate heating crucial for his continued recovery and health stability. The choice between paying utility bills and medical expenses was forcing impossible decisions that threatened both immediate safety and Tyler's long-term health outcomes. The food security challenges that had emerged as Rachel's financial crisis deepened included increasing reliance on food banks and assistance programs that provided basic nutrition but couldn't address Tyler's specialized dietary requirements related to his brain injury recovery and prescribed medications that required specific nutritional support. The monthly grocery budget that had been reduced to $220 for both family members was inadequate for maintaining the healthy diet that Tyler's medical team had recommended for optimal healing and cognitive development. The psychological stress that affected both Rachel and Tyler included constant anxiety about homelessness, uncertainty about medical care continuity, and the emotional impact of persistent financial worry that was interfering with Tyler's recovery process and Rachel's ability to provide the stable, supportive environment that her son needed during this critical period of neurological healing and development. The family therapist had recommended counseling services that their insurance wouldn't cover and that Rachel couldn't afford through private payment arrangements. The employment security concerns that kept Rachel awake at night included persistent rumors about additional hospital budget cuts that might eliminate nursing positions, creating the possibility that her only source of income could disappear while she was facing eviction and overwhelming debt obligations that would make finding Alternative employment extremely difficult. The healthcare industry's ongoing consolidation and cost-cutting measures were creating job insecurity even for experienced nurses with specialized skills and consistently positive performance evaluations. But what Rachel couldn't have known as, she faced the impossible choice between accepting homelessness or finding some way to dramatically reduce their housing costs, was that a seemingly catastrophic real estate decision driven by pure maternal desperation would soon reveal one of the most significant Cold War discoveries in American intelligence history, transforming their family's financial nightmare into opportunities that exceeded anything an emergency room nurse from Montana could have imagined about the hidden value of failed agricultural property in remote rural locations. The online real estate listing that would transform Rachel Torres' life forever appeared at 1:32 a.m. on March 14, 2024. During one of her sleepless nights spent desperately searching for affordable housing alternatives while Tyler slept restlessly. In the bedroom of their soon-to-be-lost apartment, his recovery from brain surgery still requiring careful monitoring that made their housing instability even more terrifying. The property listing for 2847 Copper Ridge Road in Forsyth, Montana, displayed a failed organic farm on 89 acres priced at $78,000, exactly matching the amount Rachel could potentially access through her devastated 401k early withdrawal, despite the crushing penalties and tax consequences that would eliminate most of her remaining retirement savings. The farm had been listed for 14 months without generating serious buyer interest, primarily due to its reputation as a cursed property that had bankrupted 3 successive owners between 2018 and 2022, each family losing their life savings to contaminated soil, failed crop yields, and infrastructure problems that seemed to multiply faster than any reasonable person could address them. The listing photographs revealed abandoned greenhouses with shattered glass panels, irrigation systems that had been destroyed by harsh Montana winters, and farmland that showed obvious signs of soil contamination from previous owners' failed attempts at intensive organic farming methods. The real estate agent, who had reluctantly agreed to show Rachel the property, Patricia Hendricks from Mountain View Realty, had been brutally honest during their phone conversation about the farm's condition, warning that single mothers without agricultural experience should never attempt to rehabilitate properties that had defeated experienced farmers with substantial financial resources and decades of farming knowledge. Hendricks had specifically advised against the purchase, explaining that the soil contamination issues alone would require environmental remediation costing between $45,000 and $80,000 before any agricultural use would be possible or profitable. The property inspection that Rachel conducted on March 19, 2024, revealed the full scope of problems that had made the farm financially toxic for multiple previous owners who had invested everything they owned trying to make the property profitable. The soil testing reports that previous owners had commissioned showed heavy metal contamination from decades of conventional farming before the organic conversion attempts, along with pH levels that were completely unsuitable for most crops and would require years of expensive soil amendment to address properly. The greenhouse structures that had once represented significant investments by previous owners were now safety hazards, with broken glass, collapsed framework, and electrical systems that had been damaged by weather exposure and would need complete replacement before any agricultural use could resume. The greenhouse restoration costs were estimated between $35,000 and $55,000 for basic functionality, not including the sophisticated climate control and irrigation systems that would be necessary for profitable organic farming operations. 38-year-old single mother Rachel Torres was ridiculed by real estate agents and agricultural consultants for purchasing a failed organic farm in remote Montana that had bankrupted 3 previous owners and sat abandoned for 2 years with contaminated soil, collapsed infrastructure and debts exceeding the property value. But she had no idea that attempting to clear the overgrown root cellar would reveal a fully operational Cold War-era underground command center that the CIA had been searching for since 1979, transforming a desperate nurse facing eviction into the recipient of a $52 million government acquisition offer and exclusive consulting contracts with the Pentagon's Cold War Recovery Division. If this story makes you wonder what secrets might be buried beneath your own property, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because next week we've got the incredible story of a construction worker who found a missing World War II German submarine under his backyard that's now worth $127 million. At 38 years old, Rachel Torres was clutching her 3rd eviction notice in 7 months, while surrounded by medical bills totaling $186,000 from her son Tyler's emergency brain surgery, credit card statements showing $67,000 in accumulated debt, and the devastating realization that her $48,000 annual salary as an emergency room nurse at Billings General Hospital could no longer sustain basic living expenses for herself and her 12-year-old son in Montana's increasingly unaffordable rental market. The financial catastrophe that had consumed Rachel's previously stable life began 18 months earlier, when Tyler suffered a traumatic brain injury during a school football practice, requiring immediate emergency surgery that insurance companies later classified as experimental, despite being his only chance for survival and normal cognitive development. The divorce that had been finalized 14 months prior had left Rachel with full custody of Tyler, but zero financial support from her ex-husband Marcus, who had abandoned his family immediately after Tyler's diagnosis and relocated to another state to avoid child support obligations while leaving behind substantial credit card debt and legal complications that continued devastating Rachel's credit score and financial stability. The custody proceedings had drained Rachel's emergency savings and forced her to rely on high-interest credit cards for Tyler's ongoing medical expenses when their insurance coverage proved woefully inadequate for addressing his complex neurological rehabilitation needs. The nursing position that had once provided Rachel with professional satisfaction and adequate income was becoming increasingly unbearable as hospital budget cuts eliminated staffing while dramatically increasing patient loads, creating working conditions that left her physically and emotionally exhausted while unable to pursue overtime shifts that might have helped address their mounting financial crisis. The stress of caring for critically injured patients during 12-hour shifts while constantly worrying about Tyler's recovery and their family's financial survival was reaching unsustainable levels that threatened both her employment performance and her mental health. The rental market throughout Billings and surrounding areas had undergone dramatic changes during the past 18 months, with corporate investment firms purchasing residential properties and converting them to luxury rentals that working families could no longer afford, while apartment costs increased by 55%, with virtually no availability for families requiring affordable housing options. Rachel's current landlord had informed her that their monthly rent would increase from $1,400 to $2,100, representing an impossible financial burden that would consume nearly her entire take-home pay while leaving nothing for Tyler's medical expenses or basic survival needs. The medical debt that had accumulated during Tyler's treatment represented the largest component of Rachel's financial nightmare, with neurosurgery costs reaching $890,000 before insurance coverage that still left their family responsible for $186,000 in co-pays, deductibles, and specialized rehabilitation therapies that insurance companies classified as non-essential despite being crucial for Tyler's cognitive recovery and future development. The hospital's payment plan demanded $3,200 monthly payments that exceeded Rachel's entire housing budget and made maintaining their apartment mathematically impossible while meeting their other survival expenses. The specialized therapy costs that Tyler required for ongoing brain injury rehabilitation had reached $1,200 monthly for occupational therapy, speech therapy, and cognitive rehabilitation services that insurance refused to cover beyond the initial 6 months following his surgery. The therapeutic interventions were essential for Tyler's continued improvement and his ability to return to normal academic and social functioning. But the costs were forcing Rachel to choose between her son's recovery needs and their family's basic housing security. The transportation challenges that affected Rachel's employment stability included a 2011 Ford Focus with 198,000 miles that required immediate repairs totaling $5,800 to remain roadworthy, including transmission work, brake replacement, and engine problems that represented more money than Rachel could access while facing eviction proceedings. The unreliable vehicle threatened her ability to maintain consistent work attendance, creating employment security issues that could eliminate their only source of income during an already impossible financial crisis. The social isolation that had characterized Rachel's life since Marcus abandoned their family was intensified by financial stress that prevented participation in community activities or maintenance of friendships that required spending money on social events or shared meals with other families. The emotional support systems that might have helped Rachel manage the crisis were inaccessible due to her work schedule and her reluctance to burden friends with financial problems they couldn't realistically help address or solve. The student loan debt that Rachel had accumulated during her nursing education had reached $89,000 with monthly payments of $720 that she hadn't been able to make for 8 months while prioritizing Tyler's medical expenses and basic survival costs for their family. The default notices and credit score damage from missed loan payments were creating additional financial complications that would affect her ability to secure housing or employment opportunities in the future, while adding penalty fees and interest charges that increased her total debt burden. The legal expenses that continued generating bills from her divorce proceedings had reached $23,000 while failing to secure any meaningful financial support from Marcus, who had successfully concealed his income and assets through business arrangements that made enforcement of support orders practically impossible through conventional legal channels. The family court system that was supposed to protect single mothers proved inadequate for addressing sophisticated financial manipulation by uncooperative former spouses who were determined to avoid their responsibilities. The health insurance premiums that were automatically deducted from Rachel's paychecks had increased to $420 monthly, while coverage had simultaneously decreased, creating situations where she was paying more for insurance that provided less coverage for Tyler's ongoing neurological care and monitoring needs. The insurance company's frequent denials of coverage for Tyler's specialist appointments and prescribed medications were creating additional financial pressure while potentially threatening his continued recovery and long-term health outcomes. The desperate housing search that might allow Rachel to maintain stability for Tyler while reducing their monthly expenses had led her to explore options in rural Montana, where property costs were theoretically lower, but employment opportunities for specialized healthcare workers were extremely limited or completely non-existent. The prospect of changing careers, while Tyler needed continuity of medical care, created impossible choices between immediate financial survival and her son's long-term health and development needs. The retirement savings that Rachel had accumulated during 12 years of nursing career had been completely depleted during Tyler's medical crisis, eliminating any financial security for their future while leaving her entirely dependent on current income for both immediate survival and any hope of long-term financial stability. The loss of retirement funds represented not only current financial stress, but also the complete elimination of any security for eventual economic independence or stability in her later years. The irrigation infrastructure that remained on the property included miles of damaged underground piping, broken pumps, and a well system that produced water with mineral content too high for optimal crop growth without expensive filtration and treatment systems. The water quality issues had contributed to previous owners' agricultural failures and would require substantial investment in water treatment technology before any farming operations could succeed on the contaminated property. The residential structures on the property included a 1960s farmhouse that required immediate repairs totaling at least $25,000 for basic habitability, including roof replacement, electrical system updates, and plumbing repairs that were necessary before the house could safely accommodate a family with a child recovering from major medical procedures. The farmhouse had been vacant for 8 months and showed signs of weather damage, rodent infestation, and neglect that would require professional remediation. The property taxes that accompanied the farm purchase would add $4,200 annually to Rachel's financial obligations, representing fixed costs that would strain her already impossible budget while providing no immediate benefit during any rehabilitation period that might be required to make the property productive or valuable. The tax assessment was based on the property's agricultural potential that multiple previous owners had been unable to realize despite substantial investments and years of effort. The insurance complications surrounding failed agricultural properties included difficulty obtaining coverage from standard carriers and significantly higher premiums for properties with documented histories of business failures and environmental problems. The insurance quotes that Rachel obtained ranged from $3,800 to $6,200 annually, representing substantial increases over typical homeowners' insurance costs while providing limited coverage for agricultural operations or environmental liability issues. The septic system inspection revealed additional problems that would require immediate attention before the farmhouse could safely accommodate full-time residents, with estimated repair costs between $8,000 and $14,000 for pumping, cleaning, and potential drain field replacement that had been damaged by heavy agricultural equipment used by previous owners. The septic system complications were typical of rural properties that had been subjected to intensive agricultural use without proper maintenance of residential infrastructure. The well water testing showed mineral concentrations that exceeded recommended levels for human consumption without filtration systems, requiring installation of water treatment equipment costing between $6,000 and $10,000 to provide safe drinking water for Tyler, whose neurological recovery made water quality particularly important for his medication effectiveness and overall health outcomes. The water treatment requirements represented another unexpected expense that would strain Rachel's limited financial resources. The property's remote location, 73 miles from Billings General Hospital where Rachel worked, would add substantial transportation costs and commute time that would affect both her work schedule and Tyler's access to specialized neurological care and rehabilitation services. The daily round-trip commute of 146 miles would consume approximately $480 monthly in fuel costs, while adding nearly 3 hours to Rachel's workday, creating additional childcare needs and reducing her time with Tyler during his critical recovery period. The building permits that would be required for renovating the farmhouse and agricultural structures were estimated to cost between $2,400 and $7,800, depending on the scope of electrical, plumbing, and structural repairs needed to bring the property up to current residential and agricultural building codes. The permit process would require detailed contractor plans and multiple inspections that would add time and complexity to renovation projects that Rachel was hoping to manage on an extremely limited budget. The contractor estimates that Rachel obtained for essential farmhouse repairs ranged from $65,000 to $95,000 for basic habitability restoration, not including any improvements to agricultural infrastructure or environmental remediation that would be necessary for the property to generate any income through farming operations. The construction costs substantially exceeded the property purchase price, creating obvious financial impossibility for someone already drowning in medical debt and facing eviction. The agricultural consultation that Rachel sought from the Montana State University Extension Service revealed that successful organic farming on contaminated soil would require a minimum investment of $120,000 over 3 to 5 years before the property could generate profitable crop yields, assuming optimal weather conditions and market prices that were never guaranteed in agricultural markets. The agricultural experts unanimously advised against attempting farming operations without substantial financial reserves and extensive agricultural experience. The environmental testing that was required for understanding the soil contamination issues revealed the presence of heavy metals, pesticide residues, and pH imbalances that would take years to remediate through organic methods, if remediation was even possible without expensive soil replacement that would cost more than the entire property purchase price. The environmental problems explained why 3 experienced farming families had lost their life savings trying to make the property productive. The property survey revealed boundary disputes with neighboring ranches and potential easement issues that could affect future development or limit agricultural operations, creating legal complications that would require attorney consultation and additional costs for resolving title problems that urban residents rarely encountered. The legal issues surrounding rural property ownership included water rights disputes and access road maintenance responsibilities that could generate ongoing expenses. The internet and telecommunications infrastructure in the remote Forsyth area was limited to satellite connections with data restrictions and reliability problems that would affect Rachel's ability to manage Tyler's medical appointments, coordinate with healthcare providers, and access telehealth services that were becoming increasingly important for neurological recovery monitoring. The isolation from reliable communication services would create additional challenges for managing Tyler's complex medical needs. The school district boundaries that included the farm property would require Tyler to change schools again, creating additional educational disruption during his recovery, when stability and familiar routines were particularly crucial for neurological healing and cognitive development. The rural school district had limited resources for special education services and neurological rehabilitation support compared to urban schools that had been providing Tyler with specialized assistance. The nearest neighbors to the farm property were over 4 miles away, creating isolation that could be dangerous during medical emergencies, particularly given Tyler's neurological condition that might require immediate medical attention without warning. The remote location would eliminate access to community support and emergency assistance that urban neighborhoods provided during family crises or medical emergencies that required rapid response. The property's agricultural history included multiple failed attempts at organic certification, suggesting ongoing problems with soil quality and environmental conditions that had prevented successful farming operations despite substantial investments by previous owners who had possessed far more agricultural experience and financial resources than Rachel could access. The pattern of repeated failures indicated systemic problems that individual effort might not be able to overcome. The heating costs for the large farmhouse during Montana's severe winters were estimated at $680 to $920 monthly, representing substantial increases over apartment heating costs, while providing less efficient climate control in a building that lacked modern insulation and energy efficiency features. The utility costs would consume money that Rachel desperately needed for Tyler's medical expenses and basic family survival needs. The maintenance requirements for rural property ownership included responsibilities for well system upkeep, septic system maintenance, private road maintenance, and building maintenance that urban renters never faced. The ongoing maintenance costs and labor requirements would create additional financial and time pressures for a single mother already struggling to balance work responsibilities with her son's medical care needs. The mortgage qualification challenges that Rachel faced included her damaged credit score, extremely high debt-to-income ratio, and the property's history of agricultural failures that made conventional financing difficult to obtain from traditional lenders. The mortgage terms available to her required higher interest rates and larger down payments that would consume most of her remaining financial resources while creating monthly payments that would strain her already impossible budget. The construction. Timeline estimates suggested that basic farmhouse habitability would require 4 to 6 months of intensive work, during which time Rachel and Tyler would need alternative housing arrangements that would add rental costs to renovation expenses, creating double housing costs during the renovation period. The temporary housing requirements would make the financial burden even more impossible to manage, while Tyler continued requiring specialized medical care. The contractor availability in rural Montana was extremely limited, with most qualified professionals booked months in advance and charging premium rates for projects in remote locations that required extensive travel time and logistics coordination. The construction labor shortage that affected rural areas would create additional delays and costs for renovation projects that required immediate completion to provide housing security for Rachel and Tyler. The materials costs for renovation. Work had increased substantially due to supply chain disruptions and inflation, making contractor estimates volatile and potentially understating the actual expenses that would be required for completing essential repairs and improvements. The uncertainty surrounding construction costs made financial planning impossible and increased the risk that renovation expenses would exceed Rachel's available resources, trapping her family in an uninhabitable property. But despite all these overwhelming problems and mathematical impossibilities that should have prevented any rational person from proceeding with the purchase, Rachel's desperation had reached a point where the failed farm represented her only remaining option for providing Tyler with stable housing while reducing their monthly expenses enough to make medical bill payments manageable and avoid homelessness during his critical recovery period from traumatic brain injury. The decision that Rachel made on April 2, 2024, to withdraw $78,000 from her 401k and purchase the failed farm, despite overwhelming evidence that the decision would worsen rather than improve their financial situation, was driven by maternal desperation rather than rational financial planning, as the early withdrawal penalties and tax consequences would consume an additional $23,000 of her retirement savings, while saddling her with tax obligations she couldn't afford. But the alternative of homelessness during Tyler's neurological recovery seemed even more threatening to his medical progress and their family's survival than committing financial suicide through purchasing property that had bankrupted multiple experienced farmers. The purchase agreement that Rachel signed included inspection waivers and as-is clauses that eliminated most legal protections for buyers, but the property's condition and distressed sale status made seller concessions impossible to negotiate, with motivated sellers who were facing their own foreclosure proceedings. The legal documents transferred all responsibility for known and unknown environmental problems, structural issues, and agricultural failures to Rachel, while providing no recourse if renovation costs exceeded her financial capacity or if additional problems were discovered after the sale closing. The closing date of April 18, 2024 represented both desperate hope and overwhelming terror for Rachel, as she committed her family's last financial resources to property that every agricultural expert had warned would complete their financial destruction. The farm deed that she received felt like both a lifeline and a death sentence, representing her final chance for providing Tyler with stable housing while potentially eliminating any possibility of financial recovery or long-term security for their family's future. The moving process that began immediately after closing was complicated by Tyler's ongoing medical needs and the farmhouse's uninhabitable condition that required Rachel to arrange temporary housing in a motel while beginning emergency repairs to make basic areas of the house safe for occupancy. The motel costs of $89 per night were consuming money she desperately needed for renovation materials while creating additional stress for Tyler, whose neurological recovery was being disrupted by the constant changes in environment and living conditions. The first month of farm ownership revealed problems that exceeded even the dire warnings Rachel had received from real estate professionals and agricultural consultants who had advised against the purchase. The well pump failed completely during their second week on the property, requiring emergency replacement at a cost of $4,200 that Rachel had to charge to credit cards that were already approaching their maximum limits, creating additional debt that threatened to push their family into complete financial collapse. The electrical system in the farmhouse proved to be a fire hazard that required immediate attention when Tyler's medical equipment couldn't operate safely due to power fluctuations and outdated wiring that couldn't handle modern electrical loads. The electrical contractor's estimate of $8,900 for basic safety upgrades represented money that Rachel didn't have, while being absolutely essential for Tyler's medical equipment and their basic safety in the deteriorating farmhouse structure. The heating system breakdown that occurred during a late spring cold snap left Rachel and Tyler without adequate warmth when his neurological condition made temperature regulation particularly important for his recovery and comfort. The furnace, replacement cost of $6,700, represented another emergency expense that forced Rachel to consider taking cash advances from credit cards at devastating interest rates that would compound their already impossible debt situation. The roof leaks that became apparent during the first significant rainfall created immediate threats to Tyler's health and safety, while potentially destroying the few possessions they had managed to move into the farmhouse. The roofing contractor's estimate of $14,200 for emergency repairs represented more money than Rachel had access to through any remaining credit sources, forcing her to attempt temporary repairs using materials she couldn't afford, while knowing that inadequate solutions would create more expensive problems. The septic system failure that occurred 6 weeks after closing created unsanitary conditions that were completely inappropriate for a child recovering from brain surgery who needed sterile living conditions for optimal healing. The septic replacement cost of $11,800 represented an emergency that threatened Tyler's health, while consuming financial resources that Rachel had hoped to preserve for his ongoing medical expenses and rehabilitation needs. The water quality problems that became apparent when Tyler became ill from consuming untreated well water required immediate installation of filtration systems costing $7,400 to provide safe drinking water for his medication regime and general health needs. The water treatment emergency represented another unexpected expense that forced Rachel to choose between Tyler's immediate safety and their family's long-term financial survival. The property insurance complications that emerged after closing included coverage exclusions for pre-existing environmental problems and agricultural operations, leaving Rachel personally liable for contamination issues and structural problems that could generate lawsuits or environmental fines exceeding their ability to pay. The insurance gaps created additional stress and potential financial exposure that could destroy any remaining hope for financial recovery. The vehicle maintenance crisis that had been postponed during the purchase process reached critical failure when Rachel's Ford Focus broke down completely, leaving her unable to commute to work or transport Tyler to medical appointments without spending $5,200 on repairs that would consume her remaining emergency funds. The transportation breakdown threatened both her employment and Tyler's medical care, while representing another impossible financial burden. The employment complications that resulted from Rachel's extended commute and property maintenance demands included missed shifts due to vehicle problems and tardiness caused by farm emergencies that required immediate attention to prevent further property damage. The attendance issues were creating employment security concerns that could eliminate their only source of income, while they were completely dependent on Rachel's nursing salary for survival. The medical appointment challenges that resulted from their remote location included difficulty accessing Tyler's neurological specialists and rehabilitation services that were only available in Billings, requiring expensive transportation and extended time away from property maintenance that was essential for making their living situations stable and safe. The medical care complications were threatening Tyler's recovery progress, while creating additional logistical and financial stress. The isolation effects that impacted both Rachel and Tyler included separation from their previous support networks and community resources that had provided assistance during Tyler's initial recovery period. The social isolation was affecting Tyler's emotional recovery and Rachel's mental health, while eliminating access to community services and informal support systems that had been crucial for managing their medical and financial challenges. The utility connection costs that were required for basic services at the remote property included installation fees for electricity, propane delivery, and waste management services that totaled $3,900 in setup costs that Rachel hadn't anticipated during the purchase process. The utility deposits and connection fees represented another drain on financial resources that were already completely exhausted through emergency repairs and basic survival expenses. The food security challenges that intensified after moving to the remote location included limited access to grocery stores and food assistance programs that had helped stretch their tight budget during the apartment living period. The increased transportation costs for obtaining groceries and the lack of nearby food banks created additional pressure on their already inadequate food budget, while Tyler's neurological recovery required consistent, high-quality nutrition. The internet connectivity problems that affected their ability to access telehealth services and manage Tyler's medical appointments online included unreliable satellite internet with data restrictions that interfered with video consultations and electronic medical record access. The communication limitations were creating barriers to Tyler's continued medical care, while preventing Rachel from accessing online resources for managing their financial crisis. The legal complications that emerged after purchase included discovered liens on the property from previous owners' debts, and environmental violations that created Rachel's legal responsibility for addressing contamination issues and unpaid obligations that she had been unaware of during the rushed purchase process. The legal problems represented additional potential costs and complications that could force property forfeiture despite her investment of retirement savings. The credit score deterioration that accelerated after the farm purchase included missed payments on medical bills and credit cards as Rachel prioritized basic survival and property emergency repairs over debt service obligations. The credit damage was eliminating future financing options, while making it impossible to access additional resources for addressing the mounting problems that threatened their basic safety and housing security. The property tax complications that emerged after closing included reassessment penalties and back taxes from previous owners that created additional financial obligations totaling $6,800 that Rachel hadn't been informed about during the purchase process. The tax liabilities represented another unexpected drain on resources while threatening property forfeiture if payments couldn't be maintained, along with all the other mounting financial obligations. The agricultural equipment requirements that were necessary for basic property maintenance included tractor rental, brush clearing equipment, and irrigation system repairs that were essential for preventing further property deterioration and environmental violations. The equipment costs were consuming money needed for basic living expenses, while being necessary for protecting their investment and preventing additional legal complications. The environmental compliance issues that became apparent after taking ownership included required remediation of soil contamination and water quality problems that could result in state environmental fines and enforcement actions if not addressed within specific timeframes. The environmental obligations represented potentially massive expenses that could exceed the property value while being legally mandatory, regardless of Rachel's financial capacity. The health and safety hazards that were discovered throughout. The property included asbestos insulation, lead paint, and structural damage that created immediate dangers for Tyler's health during his neurological recovery, when exposure to toxins could interfere with healing and create additional medical complications. The safety remediation requirements represented essential expenses that Rachel couldn't afford, while being absolutely necessary for Tyler's continued recovery. The neighboring property conflicts that emerged after settlement included boundary disputes, water rights disagreements, and complaints about property maintenance that were creating legal complications and potential lawsuit exposure. The neighbor relations problems were generating additional stress and potential costs, while threatening the family's ability to remain on property they had sacrificed everything to obtain. The winter preparation requirements that were approaching included heating system upgrades, insulation improvements, and weatherization projects that were essential for survival during Montana's harsh winter conditions, but would require financial resources that Rachel had already exhausted through emergency repairs and basic survival expenses. The seasonal preparation needs represented another impossible financial challenge that threatened their ability to remain in their only remaining housing option. The employment flexibility limitations that resulted from property ownership responsibilities included inability to work overtime shifts or accept additional nursing assignments that might have provided extra income to address their mounting financial crisis. The property maintenance demands were reducing Rachel's earning potential while creating additional expenses that consumed any money she managed to earn through her regular nursing shifts. The medical equipment complications that resulted from the farmhouse's electrical and environmental problems included difficulties maintaining Tyler's neurological monitoring equipment and concerns about equipment contamination from environmental hazards present throughout the property. The medical equipment issues were threatening Tyler's continued recovery monitoring, while representing additional potential expenses for replacement or professional cleaning services. But what Rachel couldn't have known as she struggled through the first months of farm ownership, watching their financial situation deteriorate beyond her worst fears while Tyler's recovery continued requiring expensive medical attention, was that her desperate attempt to clear the overgrown root cellar, to create storage space for their belongings, would soon reveal one of the most significant Cold War discoveries in American intelligence history, transforming their family's financial nightmare into opportunities that would exceed anything an emergency room nurse could have imagined about the hidden value of failed agricultural property in remote Montana. The mounting pressure that consumed Rachel's daily existence during the summer of 2024 intensified when Tyler's neurological specialist, Dr. Amanda Morrison at Billings General Hospital, warned that the environmental stresses and housing instability were interfering with his brain injury recovery in ways that could cause permanent cognitive damage if not addressed immediately. The specialist's report documented regression in Tyler's motor skills and cognitive function that directly correlated with their chaotic living conditions, and Rachel's inability to maintain the structured, stress-free environment that neurological recovery required for optimal healing outcomes. The medical emergency that occurred on June 23, 2024, when Tyler experienced seizures related to his brain injury while they were alone at the remote farm property, highlighted the life-threatening consequences of their isolation from emergency medical services. The ambulance response time of 47 minutes to reach their property could have resulted in Tyler's death, forcing Rachel to confront the reality that her desperate housing decision was literally endangering her son's life while failing to provide the financial relief she had desperately hoped to achieve. The employment crisis that reached its breaking point in early July came when Rachel's supervisor at Billings General Hospital issued a formal warning about her attendance problems and performance issues that had resulted from the impossible logistics of maintaining her nursing career while managing farm emergencies and Tyler's medical needs. The hospital administration made clear that continued employment problems would result in termination, eliminating their only source of income while they were completely dependent on Rachel's salary for basic survival and Tyler's ongoing medical expenses. The financial audit that Rachel conducted of their situation on July 15th revealed that they had consumed $34,000 in emergency repairs and basic survival expenses during their first 3 months of farm ownership, while accumulating an additional $18,000 in credit card debt for Tyler's medical appointments and basic living expenses. The mathematical reality showed that they were hemorrhaging money at unsustainable rates while making no progress toward financial stability or property improvement that might eventually generate income or increased property value. The utility disconnection notices that arrived in late July for electricity and propane service represented the final evidence that Rachel's desperate gamble had failed catastrophically, as she lacked the $2,400 needed to maintain basic services that were essential for Tyler's medical equipment and their survival during Montana's extreme weather conditions. The utility shutoffs would eliminate Tyler's access to neurological monitoring equipment while making the farmhouse uninhabitable during winter months that were rapidly approaching. The mortgage default notice that appeared in Rachel's mailbox on August 3, 2024, informed her that missed payments had triggered foreclosure proceedings that would eliminate their family's last housing option within 90 days unless she could immediately pay $900 in back payments and penalties. The foreclosure timeline meant that Tyler would lose housing stability during the most critical phase of his neurological recovery, when consistency and security were essential for continued healing and development. The medical insurance complications that emerged when Rachel's employer-sponsored coverage was threatened by her attendance problems included potential loss of Tyler's access to neurological specialists and rehabilitation services that were not available through state assistance programs. The insurance crisis represented a potential catastrophe that could eliminate Tyler's access to brain injury treatment while generating massive medical bills that would complete their family's financial destruction. The vehicle repossession threat that materialized when Rachel fell behind on car payments created the possibility that she would lose transportation to work and Tyler's medical appointments, effectively ending both her employment and his medical care while stranding them at the remote farm property without access to emergency services or basic supplies. The transportation crisis represented another cascading failure that would make their already impossible situation completely unmanageable. The legal complications that multiplied throughout the summer included potential environmental enforcement, actions for soil contamination violations, building code violations for unpermitted electrical work Rachel had attempted herself, and neighbor complaints about property maintenance that could result in county intervention and additional fines. The legal pressures were creating multiple sources of potential liability that could generate costs exceeding their ability to pay while threatening their ability to remain on the property. The family services investigation that was triggered by Tyler's emergency room visit included questions about housing stability and environmental safety that could result in removal of Tyler from Rachel's custody if social workers determined that the farm property was unsuitable for a child recovering from traumatic brain injury. The custody threat represented Rachel's worst fear and the ultimate consequence of her failed attempt to provide stable housing through property ownership. The mental health crisis that Rachel experienced during August included panic attacks, insomnia, and depression symptoms that were affecting her ability to provide adequate care for Tyler while maintaining her nursing responsibilities. The psychological pressure of watching their situation deteriorate beyond any possibility of recovery was creating additional health problems that threatened both her employment and her capacity to function as Tyler's primary caregiver during his continued recovery needs. The social isolation that had become complete by late summer eliminated Rachel's access to emotional support and practical assistance from friends and community members who might have provided help during their crisis. The shame and exhaustion associated with their obvious financial failure prevented Rachel from maintaining relationships that could have offered resources or emotional support during the most difficult period of their lives. The educational crisis that emerged as the school year approached included Tyler's need for specialized educational services related to his brain injury that were not available in the rural school district, while his cognitive regression made successful academic participation increasingly unlikely without intensive support services. The educational challenges represented another area where their remote location and financial crisis were interfering with Tyler's recovery and future development opportunities. The winter preparation panic that consumed Rachel's thoughts during late summer included the knowledge that Montana's harsh winter weather would make their inadequately heated farmhouse potentially lethal for Tyler, whose neurological condition affected his body's temperature regulation capabilities. The heating system repairs that were essential for winter survival would cost approximately $12,000 that Rachel had no possibility of accessing through any remaining credit sources or assistance programs. The medical equipment failures that occurred throughout the summer due to the farmhouse's electrical problems included breakdowns of Tyler's neurological monitoring devices that were essential for tracking his recovery progress and identifying potential complications before they became life-threatening emergencies. The equipment replacement costs exceeded $6,000 while being absolutely necessary for Tyler's continued medical supervision and safety monitoring. The food insecurity crisis that intensified during summer months included difficulty maintaining adequate nutrition for Tyler's brain injury recovery when grocery access required expensive trips to distant stores, and their food budget had been completely consumed by emergency expenses and medical bills. The nutritional deficiencies that resulted from food insecurity were potentially interfering with Tyler's neurological healing, while creating additional health risks during his vulnerable recovery period. The professional reputation damage that Rachel experienced within the nursing community included colleagues' awareness of her financial crisis and property management failures that were affecting her credibility and potential for career advancement or alternative employment opportunities. The professional consequences of her failed decision were eliminating future options for improving their financial situation through career development or job changes that might provide better income or working conditions. The credit destruction that accelerated throughout the summer included multiple missed payments on all debt obligations, as Rachel prioritized Tyler's immediate medical needs and basic survival over debt service requirements. The credit score deterioration was eliminating any remaining options for accessing financial assistance or emergency funding that might have provided temporary relief from their mounting crisis. The property deterioration that continued despite Rachel's efforts included structural damage from deferred maintenance, environmental contamination that was worsening without professional remediation, and agricultural equipment failures that were making basic property maintenance impossible to accomplish. The property condition was declining faster than Rachel could address problems, while potentially creating additional liability and safety hazards for Tyler's health and recovery. The neighbor relations crisis that developed during summer months included complaints about property appearance, boundary disputes over maintenance responsibilities, and tensions over Rachel's inability to contribute to community projects or maintain social relationships due to her financial and time constraints. The social conflicts were creating additional stress, while potentially generating legal complications that could force them to relocate despite having nowhere else to go. The employment performance decline that resulted from Rachel's overwhelming personal stress included medication errors, attendance problems, and difficulty concentrating during patient care responsibilities that could result in professional license suspension or termination. The performance issues were threatening her nursing career while potentially creating liability concerns that could eliminate her ability to work in healthcare permanently. The insurance coverage gaps that became apparent during summer emergencies included exclusions for pre-existing property conditions, environmental liability, and agricultural operations that left Rachel personally responsible for accidents or damage that could generate lawsuits exceeding their ability to pay. The insurance problems were creating additional exposure to financial liability while providing inadequate protection for the risks associated with rural property ownership. The medical appointment compliance problems that resulted from transportation difficulties and work schedule conflicts included missed neurological evaluations and rehabilitation sessions that were essential for tracking Tyler's recovery progress and adjusting his treatment plan appropriately. The medical compliance failures were potentially compromising Tyler's recovery outcomes while creating additional health risks during his vulnerable healing period. The utility usage crisis that developed during summer months included electricity consumption for Tyler's medical equipment that exceeded their ability to pay monthly bills, creating a cycle of disconnection threats and reconnection fees that consumed money needed for other essential expenses. The utility crisis was threatening Tyler's access to life-supporting medical equipment while creating additional financial pressure that accelerated their overall financial collapse. The legal aid consultation that Rachel sought in desperation revealed that bankruptcy might provide temporary relief from medical debt, but wouldn't address the mortgage foreclosure or property-related obligations that would still result in homelessness for Tyler during his critical recovery period. The legal advice confirmed that their situation had deteriorated beyond the point where conventional solutions could provide meaningful assistance or prevent the complete destruction of their housing stability. The family court concerns that emerged when Tyler's father attempted to use their housing crisis as grounds for custody modification, represented Rachel's ultimate fear that her desperate attempt to provide stable housing had instead created conditions that could result in losing Tyler entirely. The custody threat represented the most devastating possible consequence of her failed decision, while highlighting how completely their situation had deteriorated beyond any reasonable hope for recovery. The community resource exhaustion that had occurred by late summer included depletion of assistance from local churches, charitable organizations, and mutual aid groups that had provided temporary help but couldn't address the scale and complexity of problems that were destroying their family's stability and future prospects. The charitable resources available in rural Montana were designed for short-term emergencies rather than the systemic financial collapse and property management crisis that Rachel and Tyler were experiencing. But what Rachel couldn't have known, as she faced the mathematical certainty of complete financial destruction and Tyler's potential removal from her custody, was that her desperate attempt to create storage space by clearing the debris-filled root cellar would soon reveal discoveries that would transform their family's nightmare into one of the most significant intelligence coups in Cold War history, proving that sometimes our most catastrophic decisions can lead to opportunities that exceed our wildest imagination about the hidden potential waiting beneath the surface of our most desperate circumstances. The decision that Rachel made on August 28, 2024, to begin clearing the debris-filled root cellar beneath the farmhouse was motivated not by curiosity or home improvement ambitions, but by the desperate need to create storage space for their belongings before the foreclosure proceedings forced them into homelessness within 60 days. The root cellar had been completely inaccessible since their arrival, filled with decades of accumulated junk, rotting wooden shelves, and what appeared to be construction debris from previous owners' failed renovation attempts that had been abandoned when their agricultural ventures collapsed. The cellar cleaning project that Rachel undertook during her limited free time represented her final attempt to extract some value from the property that had consumed their life savings and destroyed their financial future, as she hoped to find salvageable materials or equipment that might be sold to generate desperately needed cash for Tyler's medical expenses and their impending relocation costs. The physical labor of hauling debris from the underground space provided temporary distraction from the overwhelming anxiety about Tyler's custody hearing and their complete lack of housing alternatives. The safety concerns that accompanied Rachel's cellar clearing work included potential exposure to environmental hazards, structural collapse from the deteriorating wooden supports, and the risk of injury while working alone in an unstable underground space without proper equipment or safety protocols. Tyler's neurological condition prevented him from helping with the physical labor, while requiring constant supervision that limited Rachel's available time for the overwhelming task of sorting through decades of accumulated debris and abandoned materials. The initial debris removal that Rachel accomplished during her first weekend of cellar work revealed multiple layers of discarded items from different time periods, including farming equipment from the 1980s, household items from various decades, and construction materials that suggested multiple incomplete renovation projects by previous owners who had run out of money or motivation before completing their improvements. The archaeological nature of the debris layers told the story of multiple families' failed dreams and financial disasters that had preceded Rachel's own catastrophic experience. The structural discoveries that emerged as Rachel cleared away surface. Debris included evidence of much older construction techniques and materials that predated the farmhouse itself, suggesting that the root cellar had been built separately and possibly served purposes beyond simple food storage during its original construction period. The construction quality of the underground space exceeded what would be expected for agricultural storage, with reinforced concrete walls and sophisticated ventilation systems that seemed inconsistent with typical rural food preservation needs. The ventilation system investigation that Rachel undertook after noticing unusual air currents revealed a complex network of concealed ducts and air filtration equipment that appeared to be designed for maintaining specific atmospheric conditions, rather than simple air circulation for food storage purposes. The ventilation complexity suggested industrial or specialized applications that made no sense for agricultural use, while representing engineering sophistication that exceeded typical rural construction standards. The wall construction analysis that Rachel conducted while attempting to assess structural stability revealed irregularities in the concrete work that suggested hidden spaces or chambers behind what appeared to be solid walls throughout the underground facility. The wall thickness variations and strategic placement of structural elements indicated deliberate design features that served purposes beyond simple structural support for the building above. The electrical system discovery that occurred when Rachel investigated suspicious wiring configurations revealed sophisticated electrical installations that included backup power systems, specialized lighting equipment, and communication wiring that far exceeded the electrical needs of simple food storage facilities. The electrical complexity suggested that the underground space had been designed to support equipment and operations that required reliable power and communication capabilities during emergency situations. The floor plan investigation that Rachel conducted after clearing sufficient debris to see the full layout revealed that the underground space was significantly larger than the footprint of the farmhouse above, extending beyond the building's foundation in multiple directions to create a complex network of interconnected chambers and corridors. The layout complexity indicated systematic planning and construction that served specialized purposes requiring multiple functional areas and secure access controls. The construction materials analysis that became possible after extensive debris removal revealed the use of military-grade concrete, specialized steel reinforcement, and construction techniques that were consistent with classified government installations rather than civilian agricultural buildings. The materials, quality, and construction methods represented substantial investments that made no economic sense for private agricultural use, while suggesting government or military involvement in the facility's original construction. The access control discoveries that emerged during Rachel's cleaning work included evidence of sophisticated security systems, multiple locking mechanisms, and entry controls that were designed to restrict access to authorized personnel only. The security features suggested that the underground facility had contained valuable or sensitive materials that required protection from unauthorized access while supporting operations that involved classified or restricted activities. The communication equipment investigation that Rachel conducted after discovering unusual electronic devices revealed remnants of sophisticated radio and telephone systems that appeared to be designed for secure communications during emergency situations when normal communication networks might be compromised or unavailable. The communication capabilities suggested that the facility had served as a command center or coordination point for activities requiring secure information exchange. The documentation discovery that occurred when Rachel found water-damaged papers and file fragments revealed partial records that included references to government agencies, military operations, and Cold War-era activities that were completely inconsistent with agricultural use of the property. The document fragments suggested official government involvement in the facility's construction and operation during periods when such activities were highly classified and restricted to essential personnel only. The equipment storage areas that became accessible after extensive debris removal revealed specialized mounting systems, equipment foundations, and storage configurations that appeared to be designed for housing sophisticated electronic or mechanical equipment that required specific environmental conditions and security protections. The storage system suggested that the facility had contained valuable and sensitive equipment that was essential for classified operations. The environmental control systems investigation that Rachel undertook revealed sophisticated heating, cooling, and humidity control equipment that was designed to maintain optimal conditions for sensitive equipment and materials, regardless of external weather conditions or seasonal variations. The environmental controls represented substantial investments in maintaining operational capability during extended periods when external conditions might make surface operations impossible or impractical. The backup systems analysis that became possible after clearing major debris areas revealed multiple redundant power systems, water supplies, and air filtration capabilities that were designed to support extended independent operations when connection to external utilities and services might be interrupted or compromised. The backup systems suggested that the facility was designed to function autonomously during crisis situations when normal infrastructure might be unavailable. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The construction timeline investigation that Rachel conducted based on materials analysis and construction techniques revealed that the underground facility had been built during the 1960s using methods and materials that were consistent with classified government construction projects during the height of Cold War tensions. The timeline placed the facility's construction during periods when the U.S. government was actively developing distributed command and control capabilities for national defense purposes. The facility capacity assessment that became possible after extensive clearing work revealed that the underground installation could have supported substantial personnel and equipment for extended periods, with provisions for food storage, water supplies, waste management, and living accommodations that exceeded simple emergency shelter capabilities. The capacity suggested that the facility was designed to support significant operations during extended crisis periods. The security perimeter investigation that Rachel conducted revealed evidence of sophisticated detection systems, access monitoring, equipment, and defensive measures that were designed to protect the facility from unauthorized access or hostile interference. The security systems suggested that the facility contained materials or supported activities that were considered essential for national security and required protection from potential threats or espionage activities. The camouflage and concealment Analysis that became apparent during Rachel's investigation revealed that the facility had been deliberately designed to appear as a simple agricultural root cellar, while concealing its true purpose and capabilities from casual observation or unauthorized investigation. The concealment sophistication suggested that the facility's existence was considered highly classified information that needed protection from discovery by unauthorized personnel or foreign intelligence services. The operational requirements assessment that Rachel conducted based on the facility's design features revealed that the underground installation had been equipped to support command and control functions, secure communications, and coordination activities that were essential for military or intelligence operations during national emergencies. The operational capabilities suggested that the facility had played important roles in Cold War defense planning and crisis management activities. The historical significance investigation that Rachel began based on her preliminary discoveries revealed that the facility's construction period, location, and capabilities were consistent with classified Cold War programs that had been designed to ensure continuity of government and military operations if primary command centers were compromised or destroyed. The historical context suggested that her property contained one of the most significant Cold War installations ever constructed in the American heartland. The preservation requirements analysis that became apparent as Rachel understood the facility's potential historical importance revealed that the underground installation contained materials and equipment that could provide unprecedented insights into Cold War defense planning and national security strategies that had been classified for decades. The preservation needs suggested that professional archaeological and historical analysis would be required to properly document and protect the facility's contents. The legal implications investigation that Rachel conducted revealed that discovery of classified government installations on private property created complex legal situations involving national security considerations, historical preservation requirements, and property owner rights that would require coordination with federal agencies and legal authorities. The legal complexity suggested that her discovery would involve extensive government involvement and potentially transform their family's relationship with federal agencies. The security clearance requirements that became apparent as Rachel realized. The facility's classified nature revealed that continued investigation and documentation would require federal authorization and security screening that could involve extensive background investigations and ongoing cooperation with intelligence agencies. The security requirements suggested that her family's discovery would involve them in classified activities that extended far beyond simple archaeological or historical research. But what Rachel couldn't have known, as she continued her desperate, cleaning efforts to create storage space before their foreclosure deadline, was that her systematic investigation of the facility's construction and contents would soon reveal evidence that would bring federal agents to her remote Montana farm and transform their family's financial nightmare into one of the most significant Cold War discoveries in American intelligence history, proving that extraordinary opportunities can emerge from our most desperate attempts to salvage something valuable from seemingly hopeless circumstances. It was 3:47 p.m. on September 15, 2024, when Rachel Torres made the discovery that would transform her family's desperate situation into one of the most significant Cold War revelations in American intelligence history, occurring while she was attempting to move a heavy metal cabinet that had been concealed behind decades of debris in the deepest section of the underground facility beneath her failed Montana farm. The cabinet, which Rachel had initially assumed was simply old farming equipment storage, proved to be a sophisticated vault system that opened to reveal perfectly preserved classified documents, communication equipment, and operational materials that had been sealed inside climate-controlled storage for over 40 years. The moment of discovery came when Rachel noticed that the metal cabinet had a combination lock system that was far more sophisticated than typical agricultural storage, with precision engineering and corrosion-resistant materials that had maintained perfect functionality despite decades of abandonment in the underground facility. The lock mechanism required a 6-digit combination that seemed impossible to determine, but Rachel's desperate need to access any potentially valuable storage space motivated her to attempt systematic approaches to opening what appeared to be the facility's most secure storage system. The breakthrough that allowed Rachel to access the vault occurred when she discovered a small metal plate concealed behind debris that contained a series of numbers that corresponded to the combination lock system, apparently left by facility personnel as an emergency access method during the installation's final closure procedures. The combination sequence 847293 opened the sophisticated locking mechanism with a precision that demonstrated the vault's exceptional engineering and preservation capabilities despite decades of apparent abandonment. The contents that Rachel discovered, when the vault door swung open, exceeded anything she could have imagined finding in rural Montana, revealing multiple levels of storage compartments containing classified documents marked with security classifications she had never seen. Sophisticated communication equipment that appeared to be from the 1960s and 1970s, and operational materials that clearly indicated the facility's role in Cold War intelligence and military operations. The preservation quality of the materials was remarkable, with climate control systems having maintained optimal storage conditions for over 4 decades. The document discovery that immediately caught Rachel's attention included operational manuals for Project Mountain Shield, detailed maps of Soviet missile installations, and communication protocols for coordinating national security responses during nuclear crisis scenarios that were clearly classified at the highest levels of government. Secrecy. The documents were marked with security classifications, including top secret, eyes only, and codes that Rachel didn't recognize, but obviously indicated extreme sensitivity and restricted access requirements. The communication equipment investigation that Rachel conducted revealed sophisticated radio systems, encryption devices, and satellite communication equipment that appeared to be designed for maintaining secure contact with government agencies and military commands during national emergencies, when normal communication networks might be compromised or destroyed. The equipment quality and complexity suggested that the facility had served as a critical communication hub for classified operations during periods of international tension. The operational materials discovery included detailed personnel rosters, emergency response procedures, and supply inventories that revealed the facility had been staffed by intelligence officers and military personnel who were responsible for monitoring Soviet activities and coordinating American responses during Cold War crisis situations. The personnel records indicated that the facility had been operational from 1962 through 1987, with staff rotations and security protocols that demonstrated the installation's critical importance to national security operations. The intelligence analysis materials that Rachel found included Soviet military assessments, nuclear weapons tracking reports, and strategic analysis documents that provided unprecedented insights into American intelligence capabilities and Cold War surveillance operations that had been conducted from the Montana facility. The intelligence materials revealed that the facility had played crucial roles in monitoring Soviet activities and providing strategic intelligence to government decision-makers during periods of international crisis. The strategic planning documents. Discovery revealed that the underground facility had served as a backup command center for coordinating military responses if primary government installations were compromised or destroyed during nuclear attacks, with detailed procedures for maintaining government operations and military command during national emergencies. The strategic materials demonstrated that Rachel's property contained one of the most important Cold War installations ever constructed for ensuring continuity of government during nuclear crisis scenarios. The weapons systems documentation that Rachel discovered included detailed technical specifications for American missile systems, nuclear weapons deployment procedures, and defensive capabilities that were clearly classified at the highest levels of military secrecy during the Cold War period. The weapons documentation revealed that the facility had been involved in coordinating nuclear weapons operations and strategic defense planning that were essential for American national security during periods of international tension. The foreign intelligence materials discovery included detailed assessments of Soviet military capabilities, intelligence reports from American operatives behind the Iron Curtain, and strategic analysis of communist bloc activities that provided comprehensive insights into American intelligence operations during the height of Cold War tensions. The foreign intelligence documents demonstrated that the facility had been a critical node in America's global intelligence network during periods when such information was essential for national survival. The technology research documents that Rachel found revealed that the facility had been involved in developing and testing advanced communication systems, surveillance equipment, and intelligence-gathering technologies that were crucial for maintaining American strategic advantages during Cold War competition with the Soviet Union. The technology materials showed that the Montana installation had contributed to significant advances in intelligence capabilities that influenced the course of Cold War developments. The emergency response procedures discovery included detailed protocols for coordinating government operations during nuclear attacks, procedures for maintaining military command during national emergencies, and contingency plans for ensuring continuity of government if primary installations were destroyed or compromised. The emergency procedures revealed that the facility had been designed to serve as a crucial backup system for maintaining American government and military operations during the most serious national security crises. The international coordination materials that Rachel discovered included communication protocols with NATO allies, coordination procedures with Allied intelligence services, and joint operation plans for responding to Soviet threats that required international cooperation and strategic coordination. The international materials demonstrated that the Montana facility had been an important link in global intelligence and military networks that were essential for Western security during Cold War confrontations. The surveillance operation documents discovery revealed that the facility had coordinated extensive monitoring of Soviet activities, tracking of communist agents operating in the United States, and intelligence-gathering operations that provided crucial information for national security decision-making during periods of international tension. The surveillance material showed that the facility had been actively involved in intelligence operations that were essential for protecting American security interests. The scientific research materials that Rachel found included technical reports on Soviet weapon systems, analysis of communist military capabilities, and research into defensive technologies that were being developed to counter Soviet threats during the Cold War period. The scientific materials revealed that the facility had contributed to important research and development activities that enhanced American defensive capabilities during periods of international confrontation. The diplomatic intelligence documents discovery included detailed assessments of Soviet political leadership, analysis of communist policy decisions, and intelligence reports on international developments that were crucial for American foreign policy planning during Cold War tensions. The diplomatic materials demonstrated that the facility had provided important intelligence support for government decision-making during critical periods of international relations. The counterintelligence materials that Rachel discovered included procedures for protecting American secrets from Soviet espionage, protocols for identifying and neutralizing communist agents, and security measures for protecting classified operations from foreign intelligence services. The counterintelligence documents revealed that the facility had been involved in crucial activities for protecting American security interests from Soviet intelligence operations. The training materials discovery included educational programs for intelligence officers, operational procedures for classified activities, and professional development resources that had been used for preparing personnel for intelligence and military operations during Cold War tensions. The training materials showed that the facility had served important functions in developing expertise for national security operations during periods of international confrontation. The logistics support documents that Rachel found revealed that the facility had coordinated supply operations for classified activities, managed resources for intelligence operations, and provided logistical support for military activities that were essential for maintaining American strategic capabilities. During Cold War competition, the logistics materials demonstrated that the installation had been crucial for supporting complex operations that required sophisticated coordination and resource management. The historical records discovery included documentation of significant Cold War events, records of important intelligence operations, and historical analysis of developments that had been crucial for understanding and responding to Soviet activities during periods of international tension. The historical materials revealed that the facility had been involved in documenting and analyzing events that were essential for American strategic planning during Cold War confrontations. The preservation assessment that Rachel conducted revealed that the climate-controlled storage systems had maintained the materials in exceptional condition, with documents, equipment, and supplies showing minimal deterioration despite decades of abandonment in the underground facility. The preservation quality suggested that the materials would provide unprecedented insights into Cold War operations and intelligence activities that had been classified for national security reasons. The security implications analysis that became apparent as Rachel examined the materials revealed that her discovery represented one of the most significant intelligence finds in modern American history, with potential implications for understanding Cold War operations, evaluating historical events, and assessing the effectiveness of national security strategies that had been implemented during periods of international crisis. The security significance suggested that federal authorities would be extremely interested in examining and potentially acquiring the materials for historical analysis and national security assessment. The authentication requirements investigation that Rachel realized would be necessary revealed that verifying the material's authenticity and historical significance would require expert analysis by intelligence historians, government officials, and national security specialists who possessed the clearances and expertise necessary for properly evaluating classified Cold War materials. The authentication process would likely involve extensive federal government involvement and could transform Rachel's relationship with intelligence agencies. But what Rachel couldn't have known as she stood in the underground vault, surrounded by some of the most classified materials from America's Cold War intelligence operations was that her phone call to report the discovery would bring FBI agents to her remote Montana farm within 18 hours and begin a process that would transform her family's desperate financial situation into opportunities that exceeded anything an emergency room nurse could have imagined about the value of Cold War intelligence materials to the federal government and historical research institutions. The phone call that Rachel made to the FBI's Helena field office at 8:23 a.m. on September 16, 2024, was initially met with polite skepticism from Special Agent Jennifer Walsh, who assumed that Rachel's report of discovering classified Cold War materials in her farm's root cellar was either a misunderstanding about military surplus items or a well-intentioned but misguided attempt to report historical artifacts that held no actual intelligence value. Agent Walsh's experience included numerous calls from civilians who had discovered military equipment, vintage communications devices, or historical documents that they believed were classified materials but typically proved to be declassified, surplus or replica items with no genuine security implications. The detailed description that Rachel provided during the 47-minute phone conversation gradually shifted Agent Walsh's assessment from routine inquiry to serious national security concern as Rachel described specific document markings, equipment serial numbers, and operational details that could only be known by someone who had actually discovered authentic classified materials from active Cold War operations. The specificity of Rachel's descriptions, including precise security classification codes and technical specifications that were not publicly available information, convinced Agent Walsh that immediate federal investigation was warranted. The emergency response team that Agent Walsh dispatched to Rachel's property included FBI counterintelligence specialists, Department of Defense security officers, and CIA historical analysis experts who arrived at the remote Montana farm at 6:15 p.m. on September 16th in unmarked vehicles that transformed the isolated agricultural property into the center of one of the most significant intelligence discoveries in recent American history. The federal response demonstrated the extraordinary importance that intelligence agencies placed on Rachel's discovery and the potential implications for national security and historical understanding. Dr. Michael Harrison from the CIA's Cold War Historical Analysis Division led the initial assessment team that conducted preliminary examination of the underground facility and its contents during an intensive 18-hour investigation that confirmed Rachel's discovery as authentic. Classified materials from one of the most sensitive Cold War intelligence operations ever conducted on American soil. Dr. Harrison's expertise in Cold War intelligence operations enabled him to immediately recognize the significance of Rachel's find and the potential implications for understanding previously unknown aspects of American intelligence capabilities. The authentication process that Dr. Harrison conducted included verification of document security markings, analysis of equipment serial numbers against classified databases, and comparison of operational details with historical records that confirmed the material's authenticity while revealing that the Montana facility had been part of Operation Mountain Shield, a classified program so sensitive that fewer than 30 government officials had been aware of its existence during its operational period from 1962 to 1987. The historical significance assessment that emerged from the federal investigation revealed that Rachel's property contained the most complete preserved Cold War intelligence facility ever discovered, with operational records, equipment, and materials that provided unprecedented insights into American intelligence capabilities and strategic planning during the most dangerous periods of nuclear confrontation with the Soviet Union. The facility's preservation had maintained materials that intelligence historians had assumed were permanently lost when similar installations were decommissioned and their contents destroyed according to standard security protocols. The intelligence value analysis conducted by CIA specialists revealed that the Montana facility's contents included operational details about intelligence networks, surveillance capabilities, and strategic planning that filled significant gaps in historical understanding of Cold War operations, while providing crucial insights into the effectiveness of American intelligence strategies during periods of maximum international tension. The intelligence materials represented a treasure trove of information that would transform scholarly understanding of Cold War history and intelligence operations. The National Security Implications Review, led by FBI counterintelligence experts, determined that while the materials posed no current security threats due to their historical nature, their discovery represented one of the most significant intelligence finds in decades and would require careful handling to ensure that sensitive information was properly protected while maximizing the material's value for historical research and national security education. The Security Review established protocols for managing the materials that balanced historical preservation with ongoing security requirements. The facility assessment conducted by Department of Defense engineers revealed that the underground installation represented sophisticated military construction that had required substantial federal investment and engineering expertise, with structural integrity that had maintained optimal preservation conditions for over 35 years after the facility's abandonment. The engineering analysis confirmed that the facility had been built to military specifications for withstanding nuclear attacks while maintaining operational capability during extended crisis periods. The equipment evaluation performed by technical specialists revealed that the Montana facility contained communication systems, surveillance equipment, and intelligence-gathering devices that represented state-of-the-art technology from the Cold War period, with many items that were prototypes or specialized equipment that had never been used in other installations. The equipment represented significant technological achievements that had contributed to American intelligence advantages during critical periods of international confrontation. The document analysis conducted by intelligence historians revealed that the facility's archives contained operational records, strategic assessments, and intelligence reports that provided comprehensive documentation of American Cold War intelligence activities, including operations that had been considered lost to history when official records were destroyed according to security protocols. The documentary materials represented an invaluable historical resource that would reshape understanding of Cold War intelligence operations and their impact on international relations. The International Implications Assessment, conducted by State Department analysts, revealed that Rachel's discovery contained materials related to Allied intelligence cooperation, NATO strategic planning, and international intelligence operations that would require coordination with Allied governments and international intelligence agencies to ensure proper handling of sensitive information that could affect ongoing diplomatic relationships. The international aspects of the discovery added complexity to the federal response, while highlighting the global significance of the Montana facility's operations. The counterintelligence review led by FBI specialists determined that the facility's contents included information about Soviet intelligence operations, communist espionage activities, and foreign threats that had been active during the Cold War period, providing valuable insights into hostile intelligence capabilities while requiring careful analysis to ensure that historical information did not compromise ongoing security operations. The counterintelligence materials offered unique perspectives on Cold War espionage activities that had been conducted by both American and Soviet intelligence services. The technology assessment performed by defense contractors revealed that the Montana facility contained communications systems and surveillance equipment that incorporated technological innovations that had influenced subsequent defense technology development, with some systems that represented advances that had been classified for decades and were only now becoming available for historical analysis. The technology represented significant contributions to American defensive capabilities that had helped maintain strategic advantages during Cold War competition. The strategic analysis conducted by military historians revealed that the facility had played crucial roles in coordinating military responses during international crises, providing intelligence support for strategic decision-making and maintaining communication capabilities that were essential for national security during periods when primary command centers might be compromised or destroyed. The strategic materials demonstrated the facility's importance for ensuring continuity of government and military operations during nuclear crisis scenarios. The preservation requirements assessment, conducted by archival specialists, revealed that the materials required immediate professional conservation to ensure long-term preservation, with climate-controlled storage, document restoration, and equipment maintenance that would require substantial federal investment in historical preservation activities. The preservation needs highlighted the material's exceptional historical value while demonstrating the federal government's commitment to maintaining these resources for future research and education. The legal framework analysis conducted by Justice Department attorneys revealed that Rachel's discovery created complex legal situations involving property rights, national security considerations, and historical preservation requirements that would require extensive federal coordination and potentially landmark legal precedents for managing classified materials discovered on private property. The legal complexities demonstrated the unprecedented nature of Rachel's discovery and the need for innovative approaches to balancing competing interests and requirements. The acquisition negotiations that federal agencies initiated with Rachel included recognition of her legal ownership of the property, while acknowledging the government's compelling interests in the classified materials and historical artifacts she had discovered. The initial federal offer of $52 million for purchasing the property and facility was accompanied by additional compensation agreements that recognized Rachel's cooperation with ongoing research and her contribution to national security and historical understanding. The consulting arrangements that intelligence agencies offered to Rachel included long-term contracts for her participation in historical research projects, document analysis activities, and preservation efforts that would provide annual income exceeding $420,000 while ensuring her continued involvement with historically significant projects that built upon her unique knowledge of the facility and its contents. The consulting opportunities represented recognition of Rachel's expertise and the value of her continued cooperation with federal agencies. The educational partnerships that emerged from Rachel's discovery included collaborations with major universities, whose Cold War studies programs sought her participation in academic research, conference presentations, and scholarly publications that would advance understanding of intelligence history while providing additional income and professional recognition for her contributions to historical scholarship. The academic opportunities offered Rachel new career possibilities that utilized her unique experience with Cold War materials. The media coordination that federal agencies implemented included controlled release of information about Rachel's discovery that generated international attention while protecting sensitive details that required continued classification for national security reasons. The media strategy balanced public interest in the discovery with ongoing security requirements, while ensuring that Rachel received appropriate recognition for her contribution to historical understanding and national security research. The security clearance process that Rachel underwent included extensive background investigations and security interviews that resulted in her receiving classified access authorizations that enabled her continued involvement with sensitive materials and research activities. The security clearances represented federal recognition of Rachel's trustworthiness and the value of her continued participation in classified historical research projects that built upon her discovery. The family impact assessment that federal agencies conducted included recognition that Tyler's medical needs and educational requirements would be fully supported through federal programs that ensured his continued recovery and development, while accommodating the family's new responsibilities related to historical preservation and national security cooperation. The federal support eliminated the medical and financial pressures that had threatened Tyler's recovery, while providing comprehensive assistance for his ongoing needs. But what made Rachel's discovery truly extraordinary was not just the intelligence, value of the materials she had found, but the federal government's recognition that her cooperation and continued involvement were essential for maximizing the historical and security benefits of the Montana facility, leading to partnership arrangements that would transform her family's desperate circumstances into opportunities for contributing to national security and historical understanding that exceeded anything she could have imagined when she first began clearing debris from what appeared to be a simple root cellar beneath her failed farm. The transformation of Rachel Torres's life that began immediately following federal authentication of her discovery exceeded every expectation that an emergency room nurse facing foreclosure could have imagined about the potential consequences of finding classified Cold War materials in her Montana farm's underground facility. The comprehensive support package that federal agencies implemented included immediate resolution of her mortgage crisis, complete elimination of Tyler's medical debt, and establishment of financial security that would ensure her family's stability. While she contributed to one of the most significant historical preservation projects in American intelligence history, the financial relief that materialized within 72 hours of federal verification included emergency payments that prevented foreclosure proceedings, settled all outstanding medical bills, and eliminated credit card debt that had been destroying Rachel's financial stability since Tyler's brain injury crisis began. The federal acquisition offer of $52 million for the property was accompanied by immediate interim payments, totaling $890,000, that provided working capital for addressing Tyler's medical needs while negotiating long-term arrangements for Rachel's continued involvement with the historical preservation project. The medical care transformation that federal support enabled included access to the nation's leading pediatric neurological specialists at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, where Tyler received comprehensive evaluation and treatment planning that optimized his recovery from traumatic brain injury. The specialized medical program that federal agencies arranged included experimental treatments that were not available through civilian healthcare systems, with comprehensive rehabilitation services that addressed both his neurological recovery and educational needs without any financial burden on Rachel's family. The housing stability that federal intervention provided included immediate mortgage resolution and property improvements that transformed the deteriorating farmhouse into a secure, comfortable home that met Tyler's medical needs, while serving as Rachel's base of operations for her new career in Cold War historical research. The property renovations that federal contractors completed included medical equipment accommodations, communication systems for Rachel's consulting work, and security enhancements that protected both the family and the historically significant underground facility. The educational opportunities that emerged from Rachel's discovery included enrollment in graduate programs at Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service, where her unique experience with Cold War materials qualified her for accelerated doctoral studies in intelligence history and national security studies. The educational support that federal agencies provided included full tuition coverage, living allowances, and flexible scheduling that accommodated her consulting responsibilities while Tyler continued his recovery and specialized educational program. The career transformation that Rachel experienced included transition from emergency room nursing to serving as senior historical consultant for the CIA's Cold War Documentation Project, a position that recognized her expertise in managing classified discoveries while utilizing her analytical skills and attention to detail that had made her an exceptional healthcare provider. The consulting position provided annual compensation of $340,000 while offering intellectual challenges and professional satisfaction that exceeded anything available in traditional nursing careers. The professional recognition that Rachel received included appointments to advisory boards for the National Security Archive, the Cold War International History Project, and the Intelligence Community Historical Review Panel, positions that acknowledged her unique contributions to understanding American intelligence operations while providing platforms for influencing historical research priorities and preservation policies. The professional appointments represented recognition of her expertise and the value of her perspectives on intelligence history and national security issues. The research opportunities that became available through Rachel's federal partnerships included access to classified archives, participation in declassification review processes, and collaboration with leading intelligence historians whose work was advancing understanding of Cold War operations and their impact on contemporary national security challenges. The research access that Rachel's security clearances enabled provided opportunities for contributing to scholarly publications and historical analysis that would influence academic understanding of intelligence history. The international recognition that Rachel's discovery attracted included invitations to speak at conferences in London, Berlin, and Moscow, where her insights into American Cold War intelligence operations were valued by international scholars and policy analysts studying the historical development of intelligence capabilities and strategic planning. The international speaking opportunities provided additional income while contributing to global understanding of Cold War history and its relevance for contemporary international relations. The media partnerships that Rachel negotiated included exclusive documentary rights with National Geographic, book publishing contracts with major historical publishers, and consulting arrangements with film production companies whose Cold War projects required authentic historical expertise and access to previously classified materials. The media agreements provided substantial royalty income, while ensuring that Rachel maintained control over how her story and discovery were presented to public audiences. The museum collaborations that emerged from Rachel's discovery included partnerships with the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of American History, the International Spy Museum, and the Cold War Museum, where exhibits featuring materials from the Montana facility were attracting record visitor numbers while generating licensing revenue that supported ongoing preservation and research activities. The museum partnerships ensured that the historical materials would be preserved and displayed for public education, while providing Rachel with ongoing income from exhibition licensing. The academic publishing success that Rachel achieved included co-authoring Buried Secrets, The Hidden Cold War Facility That Changed History, with Dr. Michael Harrison, a book that became an international bestseller while establishing Rachel as a respected authority on Cold War intelligence operations and historical preservation. The publishing success provided substantial royalty income, while enhancing Rachel's professional reputation and creating opportunities for additional writing and research projects. The consulting expansion that Rachel's expertise enabled included contracts with defense contractors, intelligence agencies, and international organizations whose Cold War research and historical analysis projects required her unique knowledge of classified materials and facility operations. The consulting opportunities provided diversified income streams, while contributing to important research projects that advanced understanding of intelligence history and national security development. The educational impact that Rachel's work created included development of curriculum materials for intelligence studies programs, creation of educational resources for public understanding of Cold War history, and participation in professional development programs that trained new generations of intelligence historians and national security analysts. The educational contributions ensured that knowledge gained from her discovery would benefit future scholars and policymakers who needed understanding of Cold War operations and their contemporary relevance. The policy influence that Rachel's insights provided included participation in intelligence community reviews of historical operations, contribution to policy development for managing classified materials discoveries, and consultation on national security education programs that prepared government officials for contemporary challenges. The policy involvement enabled Rachel to influence how intelligence agencies approached historical preservation, while contributing to improved policies for managing classified materials and supporting historical research. The technology commercialization opportunities that emerged from analysis of equipment found in Rachel's facility included licensing agreements with telecommunications companies and defense contractors whose examination of Cold War communication systems led to innovations in secure communications and surveillance technologies. The technology licensing provided additional revenue streams while contributing to advances in communication security that benefited both military and civilian applications. The property development that federal support enabled included construction of the Mountain Shield Research Center on Rachel's property, a facility that served as headquarters for Cold War historical research, while providing employment for dozens of researchers, archivists, and support staff who contributed to ongoing analysis of materials from the underground facility. The research center represented transformation of failed agricultural property into an internationally recognized center for intelligence history research. The community impact that Rachel's success created included economic development in rural Montana through tourism, research activities, and media production that brought millions of dollars in economic activity to previously struggling agricultural communities. The local economic benefits included job creation, infrastructure improvements, and business development that transformed the regional economy while providing sustainable income for residents who had been affected by agricultural recession. The legacy planning that Rachel implemented included establishment of the Torres Family Foundation, which provided scholarships for students pursuing intelligence studies, supported families facing medical crises, and funded historical preservation projects that advanced understanding of Cold War history. The Foundation's annual grants exceeded $680,000, while ensuring that Rachel's success would continue benefiting others who faced challenges similar to those her family had experienced. The health outcomes that improved circumstances enabled included Tyler's complete recovery from traumatic brain injury complications, with neurological function that exceeded medical expectations and cognitive abilities that enabled him to excel in accelerated educational programs. The medical success represented the most meaningful aspect of Rachel's transformation, while demonstrating how financial security and access to specialized care could optimize recovery outcomes for children with serious medical conditions. The educational achievement that Tyler accomplished included acceptance into specialized programs for gifted students, participation in international exchange programs, and development of interests in international relations and intelligence studies that suggested he might continue his family's involvement with national security and historical research. Tyler's academic success reflected both his intellectual capabilities and the educational advantages that Rachel's discovery had made possible. The security contributions that Rachel's continued research provided included identification of additional Cold War facilities, development of improved methods for analyzing classified historical materials, and creation of protocols for managing future discoveries of classified materials on private property. The security contributions ensured that Rachel's expertise would continue benefiting national security and intelligence community interests while advancing historical understanding of Cold War operations. The international cooperation that Rachel's work facilitated included collaboration with allied intelligence services, participation in international conferences on Cold War history, and contribution to multilateral research projects that improved understanding of Cold War intelligence, operations, and their impact on international relations. The international collaboration demonstrated how individual discoveries could contribute to global understanding of historical events while strengthening international relationships and cooperation. But the most profound transformation that Rachel experienced was the recognition that her desperate decision to purchase the failed farm, despite universal expert advice against it, had been vindicated in ways that exceeded any reasonable expectation about the potential for discovering extraordinary opportunities in seemingly hopeless circumstances, proving that sometimes our most criticized decisions can lead to contributions that benefit not only our own families, but advance human understanding of history and contribute to national security in ways that transform individual crisis into lasting legacy. 7 years after Rachel Torres first cleared debris from what appeared to be a worthless root cellar, the Torres Cold War Research Institute had become the world's premier center for intelligence history studies, attracting scholars, government officials, and international delegations whose recognition of her discoveries had fundamentally transformed not only understanding of American Cold War operations, but established new standards for civilian government cooperation in historical preservation and national security research that would influence intelligence community practices for generations to come. The revelation that shocked the international intelligence community during the Institute's 5th year of operations came when Dr. Sarah Chen's research team from MIT discovered that Rachel's Montana facility was not an isolated installation, but rather the central command hub for a vast network of hidden Cold War sites throughout the American West that had been constructed in absolute secrecy during the 1960s as part of Operation Mountain Shield, a classified program so sensitive that its existence had been known only to 4 presidents and fewer than 25 government officials who had taken its secrets to their graves. The declassified documents that emerged from Rachel's continued collaboration with federal agencies revealed that the Montana facility had served as the primary coordination center for 17 similar installations across Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and Nevada, creating a distributed intelligence network that would have enabled American command and control capabilities to survive even if major government facilities and military bases were eliminated in a Soviet nuclear-first strike. The strategic significance of the network exceeded anything that Cold War historians had previously understood about American defensive planning and survival capabilities. Dr. Elena Rodriguez from the National Security Agency spent 4 years analyzing communication equipment and operational records from Rachel's facility before concluding that the Montana installation represented the most sophisticated Cold War command system ever documented, with capabilities that exceeded those of NORAD and the Pentagon for maintaining government operations during extreme crisis scenarios. The technical analysis revealed that Rachel's remote farm had been equipped to serve as an alternate capital if Washington, D.C. were destroyed by nuclear attack. The international historical significance that UNESCO assigned to Rachel's discovery led to World Heritage Site designation that recognized the facility as representing one of the most important examples of Cold War strategic planning ever preserved, providing international protection and funding while establishing educational programs that brought researchers and visitors from around the world to rural Montana for historical education that contributed to global understanding of nuclear age, tensions, and strategic planning. The technology innovations that emerged from analysis of equipment found in Rachel's facility included breakthrough advances in secure communications, environmental control systems, and surveillance technologies that generated substantial licensing revenue exceeding $28 million annually, while contributing to contemporary solutions for military and civilian communication challenges. The Cold War technologies were providing innovations that modern engineering had been unable to develop through conventional research approaches. The pharmaceutical discoveries that resulted from studying medical supplies and life support systems at the underground facility included preservation techniques and chemical formulations that had been developed for maintaining human health during extended underground operations, leading to breakthrough treatments for neurological conditions and emergency medicine that were generating licensing revenue while benefiting patients worldwide. The medical innovations that had been perfected for Cold War survival were providing therapeutic solutions for contemporary health challenges. The agricultural applications that scientists discovered through examining food production and storage systems at Rachel's facility included sustainable farming techniques and crop preservation methods that were addressing global food security challenges while requiring minimal environmental impact. The survival technologies developed for nuclear crisis scenarios were being implemented in regions throughout Africa, Asia, and Latin America, where traditional agriculture had proven inadequate for supporting growing populations. The environmental restoration innovations preserved at the facility included air filtration, water purification, and waste management systems that exceeded the efficiency of contemporary environmental technologies while using materials and methods available during the 1960s. The environmental systems developed for underground survival were providing solutions to climate change and pollution challenges that modern environmental science had been unable to address effectively through conventional approaches. The educational revolution that resulted from Rachel's collaboration with international institutions included establishment of the Torres Fellowship Program, which provided full scholarships for students from disadvantaged backgrounds to pursue graduate degrees in intelligence studies, international relations, and Cold War history. The fellowship program was supporting over 300 students annually while developing expertise in fields crucial for understanding and preventing international conflicts. The documentary impact that National Geographic series The Nurse Who Changed History: How One Mother's Discovery Revealed America's Secret Cold War Network became the most watched historical documentary in television history, generating additional revenue exceeding $15 million through international distribution, while influencing public understanding of Cold War history and inspiring global interest in historical preservation and intelligence studies. The literary success that Rachel achieved through co-authoring Beneath the Heartland, the secret intelligence network that could have saved America, with Dr. Michael Harrison, created an international bestseller that provided substantial ongoing royalty income while establishing Rachel as a respected author whose insights about civilian involvement in national security were influencing government policy and academic research throughout the world. The museum network that featured exhibits from Rachel's discovery included partnerships with institutions in 18 countries whose Cold War displays were attracting millions of visitors annually while generating substantial licensing revenue. Through artifact loans, educational programs, and collaborative research projects, the Smithsonian's permanent Torres Cold War exhibition had become the most popular historical display in the museum's history. The consulting empire that Rachel developed included exclusive contracts with the Department of Defense, CIA, NSA, and State Department, whose recognition of her expertise had made her one of the most influential civilian advisors on Cold War history and intelligence operations in American government. The consulting arrangements provided annual income exceeding $750,000, while contributing to policy development that enhanced both historical understanding and contemporary national security. The international recognition that Rachel received included the Presidential Medal of Freedom, honorary doctorates from 12 major universities, and designation as UNESCO Ambassador for Historical Preservation, acknowledging her contributions to global understanding of Cold War history while recognizing how individual citizens could make extraordinary contributions to international peace and security through dedication to historical truth and educational excellence.